In order to preserve the social license to operate for our rural cultures, and that's the cultures of production and farming and ranching and mining and logging and fishing, we've got to talk to the public about who we are and what we do, and we've got to lead the discussion over how they can have us and a clean and healthy environment. We've got to address their concerns that they're expressing about our activities in their environment. And they're 80% living in cities now. And they're 3 generations from the farm. They have no natural resource linkage. And they're being led to believe that they have to choose to preserve the environment by locking humans out or destroy it by letting us touch it. We've got to talk to them about the choices in between. We're having what I call a collision of visions in both of our countries. You saw the slide, or the video that was just up there, and it said 72% of the public has no connection to the ground. 80% of Canadians live in an urban setting. That's even higher than down in the States. Most of our folks do live in cities. And for the last year, they've had something that, for the last 50 years, they've had 2 things humans have never had before: time and money. And what have they been doing with their 2-week vacation? They've been blowing out of places like Vancouver and Montreal and Los Angeles and Chicago and Seattle, and they've been coming to our rural areas and communing with us. And what do you know? They're falling in love. So they go home and they start fighting to protect the last best places through regulatory reform, judicial activism in our country, legislative activism in both our countries. And sadly, their vision for the last best places has one fatal flaw. There's no provision in it for the last best people. And if they don't change that, the very thing they want to protect is going to pay the price of their protection. We're being saved in our rural areas to death. And not because they're stupid or mean or ill-willed. They're very rightfully concerned. But the policy that they're clamoring for, that they demand be implemented to save our places, is not based on reality. Policy is not based on reality that you know at the ground. Policy is based on the public's perception of reality. And when it comes to the public perception of reality, Will Rogers was right. He once said, "It ain't what you don't know that's a problem, it's what you know that ain't so that's a problem." And the 72% of the public in Canada that is disconnected from the farm knows precious little about what's so at the ground level. And what's happened is also something that we share. We've lost one thing that we have deeply in common, and that's a social license to operate. Down in the States, in public timberland communities, we only operate with the consent of the public. The public ultimately gives us a yes or a no on whether or not we can operate. And down in the States, they started debating the timber license to operate on public land about 30 years ago. And we started to have a wreck. Agriculture's consent is now being discussed in both of our countries. And what happened in our timber communities on the west coast of both of our countries need to be looked at really hard by you guys. Not because we're so important in our timber towns, but because we were first, and you're next.